So welcome everyone to our first IELTS webinar in 2022. My name is Alex and I will be your host for today's webinar. Today we're talking about 10 IELTS tips from IELTS expert Rocco Nigro. And Rocco is an IELTS expert. Yeah, you can see Rocco right next to me on the screen. And he's an IELTS expert located in Brisbane, Australia. He has over 25 years of experience in English language teaching, and 20 of those years have been involved directly with IELTS. Rocco is here today to teach you about the speaking, listening, reading, and writing sections and provide you with the tips you'll need to score well in each of them. So we'll finish with a question and answer session. Make sure to ask your questions in the Zoom Q&A box, or if you're joining us on Facebook, please leave your comments in the comment section and we'll try to answer as many as we can today. And without further ado, I'm excited to hand it over to you, Rocco. Hello.
Thank you very much, Alex. And welcome everybody to our masterclass today. Oops, I might just adjust that. Okay, just one moment, everybody. Here we are. Okay, so yes, well, welcome to our masterclass today, and we're looking at 10 tips. 10 actually very important tips of how to reach a band 7 or above. And a lot of these tips will apply to reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So covering all 4 skills of the IELTS test. Now, if you do have questions, as Alex said, please type them in your chat box so we can address them later on. We'll have some time afterwards, roughly, say 15 minutes, to answer any questions that you may have. So basically, listening and reading, writing and speaking, 10 tips that are key to achieving at least a band 7. Let's have a look at some of these tips in a little bit more detail. Okay, here's a tip for the listening and reading tests. Take note of the word limits. So it does vary from question to question, test to test. Sometimes you're allowed just 1 word only, or 2 words only, or 3 words only. Or sometimes it's just a number or a combination, no more than 2 words and or a number. So don't write extra words. You can't go beyond that limit. And also, one of the tricks, I guess, for something like sentence completion, if the word is already mentioned in the question, don't mention it in your answer. So, for example, you could have a question where the answer is non-academic staff. You hear non-academic staff. But in the sentence, there's a blank. And after the blank, it says, without academic qualifications. So without academic qualifications means the same as non-academic. So don't include the word non-academic in your answer because it's already mentioned in the question. Watch out for that. Also, when it comes to the listening test, take note of things that are provided. If the answer is a number that's a currency, like $10, have a look. If the dollar symbol is already there, then don't write it down. Same with time. If there's AM or PM is mentioned, don't write that down in your answer. So word limits are very important for listening and reading. Now remember that it will say no more than, say, 2 words, or no more than 3 words. So it is okay just to write 1 word. When it says no more than, that means it's just the maximum. You can write the minimum as well. One other thing with this one is that some people get confused when it says no more than 2 words and or a number. Some people think that you have to choose between the two. but you can write a combination of words and a number together. So it could be something like 10 green books. 10 is a number, green is a word, books is a word. In this case, if the instruction says no more than 2 words and or a number, this is possible because and stroke or. You can have both. So that's sometimes can be a little bit confusing. Let's have a look at another tip now, still looking at listening and reading. Now, you could have a variety of questions, multiple choice, true, false, or not given, and there are lots of important words. But make sure you underline or highlight the important words. No need to highlight maybe articles and prepositions, but have a look at the different types of words that are important. Sometimes in the reading test, if it's a name of a person or the name of a place, those words are great to help you locate the answer in the article. Sometimes other things like verbs and adjectives and adverbs, they can help you perhaps work out what the answer is. But sometimes those names of things or names of people, names of places are great to locate your answer. And of course, in the listening test, it's important to look at the headings and subheadings to help you follow the speaker. It's a good thing to highlight those. And remember that in both the listening and reading tests, the speaker will paraphrase. They'll be paraphrasing. And the same in the reading test. There's going to be paraphrasing. So if you see a word like genetic in the question, so you can highlight that, it doesn't mean the answer is in the article where it mentions the word genetic again. It could be a word like innate, I-N-N-A-T-E, innate. That's something that comes naturally or you're born with it. Do you see that? So sometimes the paraphrasing, it's not obvious, but quite often it's something completely different. Genetic, innate. So look out for things like that. And when you highlight your important words or keywords in the questions, and you see a similar word in the article, be careful. Some people I know, they just link one keyword in the question with one keyword in the article. That doesn't mean that's the right answer. Make sure you read the whole question and make sure you read the whole sentence or the whole paragraph to make sure that everything in the question fits. The listening test, it's a little bit more challenging because the speaker is going to paraphrase those words you've highlighted. Now, let's have a look at our third tip. This is one for the reading. Now, you know, in the academic test, for example, you've got 3 longer articles, but actually in both the academic and general training, you've got roughly about, say, 2,700 words in total to read. That's a lot. Some of you may be fast readers, and that's great, and you maybe prefer to skim the article first to get an overview. That's fine, but there is a lot to read. So if you struggle with that, it can be handy to just skim, look at the questions first. Questions first, then skim the text. And you know, there are some questions in the reading where you know the answers are in order. True, false, not given. Yes, no, not given. The answers are in order. So if you've got 8 true, false, not given questions, and you notice that question number 5, there's a name of a place, and you can locate that answer quickly. Do that question first. And then you know that the other questions will be before and after that point. Multiple choice, also in order. Other things like headings, those headings are in a mixed order. There's another type of question where it's you have to locate or find which paragraph has this statement or piece of information. That's a jumbled order. So in that case, highlight the keywords and maybe read the paragraphs first. It is important to try and prioritize your time. And the reason for this particular tip is it's all about time. And quite often you could take the test home and do it over the weekend and your results come back almost perfect. However, in the test, it's exactly 1 hour. So prioritizing is important. Go to the questions. And even then, you might have one article, but 3 different types of questions. And you think, well, I'm looking at the true, false, not given, and I noticed there are about 3 of the 6 questions have got names of people that I can locate quickly. I might do those first. Or there's the one where you have to locate information in the paragraphs. That's hard. Maybe I leave that one for last. But then, highlight what you need and then scan the article and see what you can find. And also, by the way, be careful. Maybe some keywords may appear in more than one place. Just to really help you with that, just remember which questions are in order and which questions are in a mixed order. Now, of course, synonyms. Now, I guess synonyms also apply in the listening test as well. Especially the question, it's not going to be that easy, where all the words in the question are exactly the same as the words in the article. You have to think about the paraphrasing. The questions are always paraphrased from the text. So sometimes it's quite an easy thing to identify. If the word in the question is help, but in the article it says the word assist or assistance, aid, that's quite a straightforward paraphrase. Sometimes they'll do it where they'll change the part of speech. Maybe in the question there is the word create, but in the article, creation. Beautiful in the question, beautify in the article. They'll sometimes do that. But sometimes the synonyms are not that obvious. As I said earlier, the question could say something like non-academic. But in the article, it could say something like people who do not have tertiary qualifications. Tertiary means like university. People who do not have university qualifications. See, something like that, it's quite a large amount of text that's actually paraphrased one word, which is non-academic. By the way, that's another thing to remember when you think about word limits. Sorry, just going back a little bit. Something like non-academic, N-O-N, non. Then there's a hyphen, then the word academic, non-academic. Some people think that because there's a hyphen, it's 2 words. But in fact, when it's a hyphen, it's counted as 1 word. Part-time job. Part-time is actually with a hyphen. Part-time, 1 word. Part-time job together is a total of 2 words. Part-time is 1 word. Job is 1 word. Okay. So synonyms. And do that. Of course, in the listening test, synonyms are also important. Okay, let's go on to writing. And I love writing. Write enough words. Now you'll see the instructions. For task 1, academic or general, the instructions say you should write at least 150 words. In task 2, in academic and in the general test, it will say you should write at least 250 words. There's a problem if you don't. You're going to lose marks. So think about grammar. To get a good score for grammar, you need to show a range. You can't do that if your answer is too short. The same with vocabulary. To get a good score for vocabulary, you have to show a range, a wide range of vocabulary. If your answer is too short, it's harder to do that. You're going to lose marks. Also, with the task achievement or task response score, which is also worth 25%. So grammar is 25%, vocabulary 25%. Task achievement or task response is worth 25% as well. So if your ideas are not developed and not extended, you're going to lose marks. That's important. So look at all the areas that you're going to lose marks in if you don't write enough words. Also importantly, now if you're doing the computer-delivered IELTS, it's great because they give you a little counter that you can see how many words you've written. If you're doing the paper-based IELTS, that's okay. All you need to do is just download the writing answer sheet and practice on that. If you find that, for example, in task 2, that with the answer sheet, normally you reach, say, 3/4 of the way on page 2, you normally reach about 250. If you practice enough, you usually know the mark where you reach 250 words. And in task 1, you'll know the mark where you normally reach 150 words. So when you're practicing, keep it, take a note of where you normally finish. Then in the real test, try to move past that point. So that example I said about task 2, continue to the end of the second page. Now, in terms of pages, don't be afraid to get a second page. Ask the supervisor of the test to give you a second page. No problems at all. So, 150, 250 words, that's a minimum. There's no maximum in the number of words to write. So, if you write 200 words for task 1, doesn't matter. If you write 350 words for task 2, it doesn't matter. The only thing that does matter is that your answer is directly related to the question and you're not repeating yourself or going off topic. So 350 words is fine as long as you're actually directly answering the question. It tends to be that with a lot of the higher level people going for band 7, band 8 and band 9, because their language is more complex, they kind of generally go push past and go quite easily to 200, 250 words for task 1, 300, 350 words for task 2. So write enough words, write plenty of words, and but make sure that you are exactly on topic. Don't include things that are unnecessary. Okay, let's have a look at tip number 6. Writing paragraphs. Use paragraphs. So in the general training task 1, you have to do a letter. Letters still should have paragraphs. In the academic test, task 1, you have to describe the graphs or charts or processes, maps. That still requires paragraphs. Now, each paragraph should have a main idea. So in the letter, where you have the bullet points, maybe you can have a paragraph for each bullet point. So it's got a main topic. In the academic, task 1, maybe if it's a pie chart and there are 4 divisions, and you notice with the pie charts that 2 of the segments show an increase in trend and the other 2 segments show a decrease in trend. Maybe you organize your paragraphs. Okay, body 1, I'm going to talk about the segments that showed an increase. And body 2, I'm going to describe the segments that had a decrease. Organize it like that. Make sure there's a clear division and mention it. Don't just start your paragraph with first of all, describe the category. Something like looking at the age groups, if it's age groups, looking at the age groups that showed an increase, first of all. And then for body 2, turning to the age groups which had a decreasing trend. Label it very clearly so the examiner knows how you've organized your answer. Now, let's consider task 2, the essay, both the academic and the general. When you write your body paragraphs, now for band 7, you have to have a clear topic sentence. Topic. That's the important word. A clear central idea. One idea per paragraph. Now, I've seen some paragraphs where people say, the reasons for this trend are diverse. First of all, because the question might be asking you, what are the reasons for this? What can we do about it? So you might say, oh, the reasons are diverse. First of all, you have a sentence for one reason. Secondly, a sentence for another reason. What is more? Another idea. Rather than having 3 completely unrelated ideas, have one. The reasons for this are diverse. That's not a topic sentence. Topic has a theme. Should public transport be free? That could be the essay question. And so, a topic sentence, yeah, I agree. The first reason is to do with health. So you could say, and the second reason is to do with cost. So maybe body 1, you can talk about health. Body 2, you can talk about cost. I wouldn't put health and cost in the same body paragraph. They're 2 completely separate ideas. So you could say something like, the first reason to support my view is the issue of health. This is because people would be encouraged to walk more if they use public transport, and therefore they would lose more weight. And the other way it can improve your health, there will be less pollution because there'll be fewer cars on the road. It would help people's respiratory system. See, these ideas are all related to health. The topic for this paragraph is health. Don't put health, cost, and freedom in the same paragraph. They are 3 separate ideas. And this is one of the main problems I find. And you would lose marks for your coherence and cohesion score. Because if you look at the descriptor for band 7, and you can access that because it's, if you just go to Google and put in IELTS writing task 2 band descriptors, you'll notice that if you look at task 2 and band 7, coherence and cohesion, each paragraph has a main idea, core idea. Okay, let's have a look at tip number 7. Check your spelling. This is mentioned as a tip for writing, but it is also a tip for reading and listening. It's incredibly important because if your spelling is incorrect in the listening or reading test, the answer is marked as wrong. In the listening and reading, it doesn't matter if you use or don't use the capital letter. That doesn't matter. In the writing test, you should take care of using capital letters. If it's the name of a country in academic task 1, you should use it, a capital letter. But if it's the name of a country in the listening test, you don't lose marks if you forget to use it. And remember, little things like if you forget the hyphen, part-time, if you forget the hyphen, it's marked as wrong because the correct spelling is with a hyphen. Now, if some of you have said, look, I've learned American English at school, is it a problem? No, you can use American spelling, no problem. C-O-L-O-R, color, fine. Don't lose marks. It's not marked as wrong. Yeah, or C-O-L-O, you are British English, it's also fine. The reading test is, I guess, is less of an issue because quite often the word is printed for you in the article, or it's printed for you in the question. True, false. Please, the correct spelling of true is T-R-U-E, not T-U-R-E. False, F-A-L-S-E, not F-L-A-S-E. So careful, even when they give you the word, you've got to spell it correctly. Now, but when it comes to the writing test, spelling is also important. If you have a lot of spelling mistakes, it's going to affect your vocabulary score. Vocabulary is worth 25% of your score. So sometimes it's a good idea to give yourself 5 minutes, to try and finish 5 minutes early if you can in the writing, just so you can go back with fresh eyes and just to review the spelling. For those of you doing the computer delivered IELTS, I'm sorry to say there's no spell check for you in the test, so you have to edit it yourself. If you're doing editing or your spelling in the paper-based test, make sure you erase it very clearly and rewrite it properly. Now, it's okay to get band 7 and have a few mistakes here or there, but certainly you can't have many if you want to get a higher band. Okay, let's keep moving along. Let's have a look at speaking. This tip here, number 8, speak clearly and at a natural pace. This is to do with your fluency and coherence score, which is worth 25% of the speaking test. So remember, grammar is 25%, like in writing. Vocabulary is worth 25%, like in writing. Pronunciation is worth 25%, and fluency. One of the aspects of fluency, especially for band 7, is your ability to develop and extend your ideas, but speak clearly and at a natural pace. Speaking clearly will help you with your pronunciation and a natural pace. Now, one thing to remember, good fluency does not mean speed. So some people confuse speed with fluency. So if I speak fast, that will impress the examiner. Unfortunately, it doesn't. I'm actually speaking fluently now, but I don't think I'm speaking quickly. So just go at a natural, calm pace. But at the same time, not too slowly. If you've got pausing and hesitation, that's going to be a problem. It's okay to have some hesitation, especially when you're thinking of ideas, because it's a very natural thing to do. But if you're pausing or hesitating because you're searching for the right vocabulary and grammar, then that's going to be a problem. But speaking clearly at a natural pace helps with pronunciation. It helps you with individual sounds of English. It's important that the examiner hears you well. But also you're assessed with things like intonation, rhythm, stress. I find that people who do memorized answers, quite often they struggle to have good pronunciation because they're just trying to remember all the words rather than trying to speak at a natural pace. So don't memorize. It affects your pronunciation severely. People end up having a flat pronunciation. So you need to have intonation and rhythm. And rhythm is when you speak with emphasis. English is like, it has rhythm. And every so often we stress, like, let's look at this sentence. I went to the market to buy some bread. Do you see that? Went, market, buy bread. I went to the market to buy some bread. If you're speaking fast or you memorized your answer, that's harder to do. And you need to have intonation as well. Rising, falling intonation. And you can show that with emotion. to show surprise and anger. Word stress, natural, natural. Emphasis on the first syllable. Information, information. Stress on the third syllable. Word stress, describing a story. Oh, I was so embarrassed that I arrived late at my class. My teacher was absolutely furious. Do you see? It's important to give word stress as well. This tip, it says speaking, but it also applies to writing as well. So let me describe this from a speaking and a writing perspective. I hear this tip a lot. Oh, you should use short sentences. If you use short sentences, you make fewer mistakes. That may be true, but that doesn't mean that you can achieve a higher band score. Even the descriptor for band 6 will say you can use a mix of simple and complex structures. So if you're using simple only, you can't get band 6, despite how accurate you are. So a range does not mean simple. A range means you're using complex sentences. So try to use complex sentences in both your speaking and your writing test. So use clauses, not just short. Try to link your clauses together. Linkers, words like so, because of that, despite that, oh, then again. So using a range of connectors to link your ideas. It could be linking with cause, effect, something in addition, plus. Now, also the word variety, also it refers to variety of sentence types. You could use an if sentence. If public transport is free, comma, more people would use it. So there's two clauses linked together. So that's an if sentence. That's great, but if you keep using it, you're not showing a range. You need to show variety. And so this is tricky in, say, speaking part 1, when you have to talk about things that you like and prefer. Try to use a variety of phrases. I like, I have a liking for, I'm really into. So using a variety of language, therefore, would lead onto a variety of grammar. In writing academic task 1, there's a trap there, if you're not careful, describing a line graph, for example, where you end up repeating the similar sentence type or grammar type because you're kind of describing the same thing. Try to use variation whenever possible. Use an if sentence when you're speaking or writing. Change the order of an if sentence. Use other types of structures and grammars. Using a variety of verb tenses as well can help with this. Talking about the past, talk about the present and the future, and the past until the present, and things like that. Okay, so range, remember, range means a variety, but also using complex structures, not just short only. And one more tip, extend your answers. This applies to both speaking and writing. I'll talk about speaking first. In part 1, you're given some questions, some very familiar questions about yourself, your country, that kind of thing. And it's perfectly fine to extend your answers there. Give a reason. The examiner may ask you why. Sometimes they'll ask you why, though they will especially ask you why if you haven't extended. Don't overdo it. Don't keep speaking until you can't think of anything. Just give a natural extension. Say what you want to say, and give an extra sentence to support giving reasons. Of course, in speaking part 2, you have to extend because you have to speak for 2 minutes. And one of the dangers in part 2 is that people finish too early. So have a look at the 3 bullet points and the 4th idea. So remember, there are 4 things to talk about in speaking part 2. Always think about how to divide into 2 parts. So maybe one of the bullet points is, it could be describe a time, or describe a movie that you enjoyed. And one of the bullet points could say, describe why you enjoyed it. You can give 2 reasons. And you could structure it as well. You could say, well, when it comes to why I enjoyed it, in fact, there are 2 reasons that come to mind. The first one is, and then describe that. Then say, then the second one is, so look at the bullet points, think about any that you can divide. If it says who, maybe think of 2 people and describe them. Where, it could be 2 places. Why, it could be 2 reasons. Now, in part 3, also it's important to extend your answers, justify them, give reasons, give examples. You should really imagine that speaking part 3 is like an essay question. Give consequences. Should public transport be free? You can give your opinion. From where I stand, it should definitely be free because it's a great way to improve people's health. This is because without driving a car, it would force people to walk more, climb stairs, and so on. And then give a consequence. Otherwise, the amount of car ownership would just increase and more pollution would be created, further exacerbating people's health. Give an example. For example, in Copenhagen, which I believe is in Denmark, if I'm not wrong, they have encouraged a lot of free public transport or affordable public transport. And that is one of the cleanest cities in Europe. Look at that. Offering lots of reasons, justification, consequences. A consequence if it does happen and a consequence if it doesn't happen. An example. But remember, in speaking part 3, don't extend with personal examples or extend with personal experiences, because your time for speaking about personal things was in part 1 and part 2. However, you can use your personal experience, but you can reword it to sound more general. So, for example, I lived in Japan, and in a city like Tokyo, it's a big city, but the public transport's really good and it's always on time. And, even though it's a very, very large city. So rather than saying, for example, when I lived in Japan, I noticed that, change it to something like, well, for example, the city of Tokyo in Japan has a very efficient transport system to the point that many people there do not own a car. That example, it's not personal. Now, that thing about not owning a car, my Japanese friend told me that, oh yeah, I don't need a car because I can get anywhere by train. But I didn't say that. So part 3, use personal experiences, but reword them so they're a lot broader. When it comes to the writing test, it's also important to extend your answers. Remember what I said about your body paragraph development? Rather than having 3 separate ideas in your body paragraph, just have one solid idea and extend that topic sentence, justify that idea, give a consequence of that idea. Give an example of that. And the same in the writing test. You can use personal examples, but I think if you make them, reword them so they're non-personal, you will find that you'll give yourself a wider range of language. Perhaps you'll use vocabulary that's less common. And if you use vocabulary that's less common, you're more likely to get a higher band. So try to avoid that. Also, examples in the writing test, don't use invented statistics. According to a report by the New York Times, 45% of something, something. It's so obvious that it's been invented. So please don't use examples like that. Try to make your examples much broader. Okay, so extend your answers in speaking and writing. Extending your answers in your writing test will help your task achievement or task response score. Band 7 means that you've really developed and extended in both task 1, task 2. If you haven't extended, you can't get a 7. Band 5 and band 6 is for people who've underdeveloped their ideas. So remember, it's not about trying to make a big list of ideas. It's about picking just a couple and extending them. Same in the speaking test. In part 3, don't make a big list. Just why do some people prefer driving a car? So don't make a big list of ideas, just pick one and really develop and extend that one reason rather than bombarding the examiner with a list of 5 or 6. Remember, it's better to have something that's fully developed. One thing that's fully developed is much better than 4 or 5 things that are underdeveloped. Well, that's it from me in terms of the presentation. So there are 10 kind of key tips there. Everyone, we do have some time set aside to do questions and answers. So please feel free to type your questions in the chat box or the question box there, and we'll do our best to answer them. Alex?
Thanks, Rocco, for a fantastic webinar. These were really great 10 tips on how to succeed in your IELTS test. And we've had a number of interesting questions. So I hope you're ready to answer some of them, Rocco. So let's start from Ollie, who is asking us through the Zoom chat. When we sit IELTS, are there any breaks between IELTS modules?
I believe these days that it's the listening, reading and writing is done without a break. However, if you need the bathroom, you can go to the bathroom, but you don't get any extra time. There used to be a break between listening and reading and break than the writing, but I believe it's all done in one sitting now.
Right, this is good to know. Then the next question is, for filling the blanks, can we use synonyms or do we use the exact word from the text?
I think it's best to use the exact word from the text. And that's same for the listening, the exact word that you hear. So if it doesn't fit grammatically, then that's probably a good tip because, maybe it's not the right answer.
Right. Thanks, Rocco. Then the next question here is, can you please tell me how many minutes in total should we speak in the part 3?
The part 3 is 5 minutes in total. So the examiner will ask you a variety of questions, but the maximum amount of time is 5 minutes. So if they interrupt you because time is up, don't feel bad. Same in part 1 and part 2. It's very carefully timed. So don't feel bad if they stop you and interrupt you. If you're talking about how long I should speak per question, try not to force yourself to have a set time per answer, because you should let each answer develop naturally. Sometimes I find that a person will give a brief answer. It's a bit brief. then ask a follow-up question to expand, and then you can't stop them. Because I think let the answer run naturally. It's only an issue if every answer is short. Then it's going to affect your fluency score.
Right, good to know. Thanks, Rocco. Then the next question is from Philippines, and they would like to know, how extensive should your vocabulary be? Would it help to use more complex words?
Yes, for band 7 and higher, you have to use less common vocabulary. You'll find, let's look at the word prefer. That's a kind of a common word. If you paraphrase and go to the noun form, preference, it's less common, but also look at the collocation. Have a preference for. These 4 words are a more complex collocation. You could also say partial to. Partial to and preference for, same thing. Rather than saying, I prefer traditional food instead of fast food, I'm quite partial to traditional food instead of fast food because da-da-da. So using words that are less common and more complex in terms of collocation, absolutely. You need to do that for 7, 8, 9.
Right, thanks, Rocco. Then the next question is, how to tackle the reading section academic, as the time is not sufficient, and I'm usually able to score 6.5 in reading in mock tests.
So we talk about fluency in speaking, but there's also fluency in reading. So it means that when you do your reading practice, I think try to mix the practice, try and do some reading without questions. So you get used to following the logical order of an article. That's important. So improving your just general reading fluency. Some people, I find, they can read an article and understand it perfectly, but struggle with the questions. So it's worth doing some practice tests and just seeing which of the questions that take up most of your time, and maybe focus on those. So it may also mean that you need to save time. So how to do that? Being able to identify the location of words. So think about that, names of things, where's the answer in the article, working out which of these questions are in order. As I said earlier, if you're doing true, false, not given, they're in order. That's a good place to start. And question 3, there's the name of the country. I'll do that question first. So prioritizing. It's not always about doing the questions in order. And maybe, true, false, not given is questions 9 to 13. I'll do them first. It could be just prioritizing the order that you do things quickly. The one about locating which paragraph has this one, do that one to last, once you're more comfortable with the article. So prioritizing and maybe some more general reading without the questions.
Right. Good advice. Then another person would like to know, when we talk about use no more than 2 words and or a number, should the numbers be written or spelled? For example, 10 green apples with 10 like an actual number, or should it be a word?
Write it as a number. If you put T-E-N, that's considered a word.
Right. Thanks, Rocco, for this. And then the next question is, in writing, if someone meets just a minimum requirement for word limit, but still performs well on the task, can they get full marks, or should they still write more? I guess it basically means, is it favorable for them to go past that word limit?
I would say it's a word minimum, not a word limit. So it is possible to get if they say full marks, I assume they're meaning band 9. It is possible to get band 9 in 150 words for task 1 and 250 words in task 2, but it's harder. To get a higher band like 7, 8, and 9, I would encourage you to push past 150 and push past 250 for task 2, because if you're using complex sentences and complex vocabulary like have a preference for, there's 4 words. about 5%, in the vicinity of 5%. So you're naturally going to push past. And I would encourage you to write more words, because you're then showing more evidence of band 7 and band 8 and band 9 kind of language. So it is possible, but it's harder. I would encourage you to do more. Don't be afraid to write an essay of 300 or 350 words.
Yeah. Thanks, Rocco. Then the next quick question is, I'm going to sit my computer-based IELTS exam soon. Do they provide paper and pencil to make notes?
Yes, they do.
That was a really quick one, right?
Yeah, they do. And it's just a little piece of paper. But if you need more, just ask. Also with one more thing there, Alex, as well, is that with the computer-delivered IELTS, you can actually click on the screen and put a comment, like a bubble there as well. So you have the option of making notes on the document on the screen, as well as paper and pencil as well.
Right, that's quite handy. Then there's a person asking, can you tell me how to identify consistent changes in graphs in task 1 in academic?
Consistent changes in graphs.
Yes, consistent changes in graphs.
So I guess what this person means is not like a simple line that goes up, maybe something that fluctuates, some goes up, some go down. Let's look at a line graph as an example. If you've got 6 lines and 3 of them generally go up and 3 of them generally go down, I would encourage you to group the things together that are similar, rather than grouping things together that are different or opposite. Let's look at comparing a couple of countries. Like we can compare Russia against Fiji, they're 2 countries, or Russia against Canada. Think about this. Russia is very large, a large country. Fiji is a small country. Russia is a cold country, but Fiji is a hot country. They're kind of opposite. I would much rather compare Canada with Russia. They're both large countries, but actually Russia is a little bit larger than Canada. They're both very cold, but maybe Canada is slightly colder than Russia because the latitude is closer to the North Pole. See, I'm using words like closer, slightly colder. If you put items together that have a similar trend, you're more likely to produce better language of comparison and contrast. So if you've got 2 lines that fluctuate, put them together. 2 of them peak at the beginning, put them together and contrast them.
Right, thanks, Rocco. Then one more question from Said. He wants to know, is it okay to use both American and British English in the same task, or should it be one or the other? That's a good question. Yes. I think in daily life, it's better to be consistent, like for work and things like that. But in the test, it doesn't matter. Okay, good to know. Then the next question is, does IELTS prefer any particular formatting with writing? Like, do they prefer caps or cursive? Oh, right. Now, if you write in caps, you're not penalized. You're not penalized for that. Okay, this is good. Then another question from Miling. I like to space out my words by skipping a line. Will this impact my marks? What I would encourage you to do, it doesn't affect your marks. It may make it harder to decide where one paragraph starts and one paragraph finishes. That's the only issue I find with that. I think leaving an empty line is a brilliant idea between paragraphs. Right. So when you end one paragraph and start another one, have a line empty so it's very clear for the examiner to see how you've separated your ideas. If you've got a blank between every line, it is a little bit harder to read, but therefore make sure you have a blank of three or four lines between your paragraphs so they're very clearly separated. Right, thanks for this answer, Rocco. And I have a very interesting question to wrap up the session for today. I would like to improve my score in the reading section. How do you suggest I do this?
In reading?
Reading.
Okay. I guess it comes down to practice is one thing. Try to read a variety of articles, not just IELTS practice tests. Read other things. Read opinion pieces in the newspaper, magazine articles. Try to have a good variety and then categorize your articles into topics. So if you read, here are some articles about health, here are some articles about transport, education, technology, and so on. What you'll find then is that some of the vocabulary will reappear. And when it comes to vocabulary, when you see a new word in an article, then try to guess the meaning from the context. If you've read 6 health articles, you notice, oh, I've noticed this word again. And then it helps you remember vocabulary. It helps you remember concepts, health concepts, and then you can become faster with your fluency. It's good to look at the different types of questions as well. I don't think some people just do IELTS practice tests and that's it. Try to vary and have a variety and combination. It's good to do the practice test and get familiar with the questions. And try to collate your results. If you find, hey, I noticed I really struggle with headings, then you can collate, oh, I noticed that. I'm struggling with headings, then I'll do more headings questions. So balance it, but not just test practice. Read a variety of things.
Right, that's a very good piece of advice, Rocco. And I think we are ready to wrap up for today. Thank you for joining us to share your knowledge, Rocco, and the brilliant answers you've provided to our test takers. We've received a lot of great feedback. For example, Sam is writing, your explanation is very clear, Mr. Rocco. Thank you so much. Yeah. And there's been a lot of great feedback so far. And also further thank you to everyone who tuned in tonight and to our fantastic team who makes it all possible. Now, for our test takers, if you're looking for more IELTS preparation material, make sure to visit our website, ieltsidp.com. Follow us on our socials. You'll find the links down below in the footer of our website. Also, check our new IELTS Prepare Hub, as well as the webinar registration page where you can register for more of our upcoming webinars. And that's it for tonight. Thanks, everyone, and see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Take care and all the best with your IELTS. Goodbye.